Justice and revenge are two concepts that, for most people, are seen as separate. However, sometimes these two ideas intertwine so much that they become almost indistinguishable. Pedro Rodrigues Filho, or better known as Pedrinho Matador, is a man who became infamous for dedicating his life to a quest for revenge. One of Brazil's most feared and talked about serial killers, Pedro took the lives of hundreds, believing that he was delivering justice. But his story is not just about crime and punishment. It's also a journey into the dark side of human nature. Today, we'll delve into the life of this man who grew up in the crime-ridden streets of Brazil, shaped by violence, and we'll uncover how his twisted sense of justice ultimately turned him into a serial killer. This is a story about revenge, justice, and the darkness that can reside within a person. Pedro Rodrigues Filho was born on July 17, 1954, in Minas Gerais, Brazil. But from the moment he entered this world, there were no signs of the dark path his life would take. Growing up in poverty, Pedro's childhood was filled with hardship. His father struggled to make ends meet, and his mother was trapped in an abusive marriage. The violence that Pedro witnessed as a child would shape him into the killer he became. Before Pedro was even born, his mother had already been violently assaulted by his father. This trauma left lasting scars on Pedro's psyche. Even before he entered the world, growing up, he was a witness to constant abuse, and this violent environment shaped his understanding of the world. His father's brutality was the foundation on which Pedro's own capacity for violence would be built. At just 10 years old, Pedro had his first experience of violence, when his father physically attacked him. Pedro made the decision to fight back. This moment marked the beginning of his transformation. In a household where violence was the norm, Pedro learned early on that only by using violence could he assert control. One of the most pivotal moments in Pedro's life came with the murder of a man. At 13 years old, Pedro harbored deep resentment towards this man, who had unjustly fired his father from his job. The anger Pedro felt towards the mayor grew over time, and he began plotting revenge. It was not just about a job, it was about the injustice Pedro felt in his own family. One day, Pedro decided it was time to take action. Armed with a gun, he tracked down the mayor, and in a moment of cold calculation, he killed him. This murder marked the first of many, but it was more than just a crime. It was Pedro's first step into the world of vigilante justice. However, it was clear that this would only be the beginning of his path to violence. To Pedro, the murder of the mayor was not just an act of revenge, it was justice. From this point on, Pedro's life became intertwined with violence. He saw the world through the lens of retribution, believing that only by eliminating those he deemed guilty could he achieve a sense of balance. One of the darkest moments in Pedro's life came with the death of his father. Pedro's mother had been the victim of repeated abuse at the hands of her husband, and one day, she could no longer endure the violence. Her death at the hands of his father left Pedro with an overwhelming sense of rage and a deep desire for revenge. After his mother's death, Pedro vowed to kill his father. He entered the prison where his father was being held and confronted him. In a fit of rage, Pedro attacked him with a knife, stabbing him 22 times. For Pedro, this was the ultimate act of justice. But it was also an irreversible step towards becoming the man he would later be known as. Pedro did not just seek revenge for his mother, he was also seeking to rid himself of the ghosts of his past. His father's death symbolized the end of an era for Pedro. It was a brutal, decisive moment in his transformation, and from that point on, Pedro became a man consumed by violence and a warped sense of justice. Pedro's time in prison marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one defined by unrelenting violence. Within the walls of the prison, Pedro's sense of justice continued to evolve. He became notorious for his brutal killings, targeting inmates he deemed to be criminals deserving of death. It wasn't just about survival for Pedro, it was about cleansing the world around him. Over the years, Pedro murdered at least 47 prisoners, and each of these killings was carried out with a chilling sense of purpose.
One of the most infamous killings was of a man who had sexually assaulted a young child. Pedro, upon hearing another cry, hunted the man down and killed him in cold blood. But for Pedro, this act was not one of mere vengeance. It was a personal mission to rid the world of people he saw as unworthy of life.
Pedro's name became synonymous with fear within the prison walls. He was not just a criminal, he was a force of nature, an agent of his own twisted brand of justice.
His actions, though horrific, were seen by him as part of a greater plan to cleanse the world of evil. Pedro Rodriguez Filho's life is a paradox. He became a symbol of both terror and justice. To him, he was a hero, someone who fought against the evil he saw in the world.
But in reality, Pedro's actions were those of a man consumed by his own sense of righteousness, unable to distinguish between justice and vengeance.
His story forces us to ask the question: can justice truly be served through bloodshed, or does it only perpetuate the cycle of violence?
Pedro's tale is a chilling reminder that sometimes the line between justice and vengeance is far thinner than we would like to believe.